Welcome back to another Sinister broadcast with your spooky host with the most, Raz. Welcome back to another Sinister broadcast. In tonight's episode, we invite you to step beyond the comfortable boundaries of reason and into a broadcast already in progress. A place where science overreaches and the dead refuse to remain silent. Where a voice in the dark begins to remember and something unseen begins to listen. You'll hear tales carried on foggy river waters of a woman who may never have left the shadows of Bellows Falls, of echoes from a battlefield that still trembles in Fort Griswold, and of restless spirits drifting between storm and sea along the Isles of Shoals. You'll walk the halls of a house that does not forget, hear music that was never meant to be played, and follow a woman who discovered that time is not as obedient as we pretend. And somewhere in between these stories, a man named Raz will discover that the line between storyteller and story is thinner than he imagined. We offer no comfort, no certainty, only this simple suggestion. Be careful what you listen to, because tonight, something may be listening back. This is your Sinister broadcast. And now a quick word from our sponsors. Following last week's unfortunate broadcast incident, many listeners have asked, is there a safe way to reanimate the dead? There is. Hello, Dr. Wormwood speaking. Unlike certain overexcited amateurs, my methods are precise, controlled, and dignified. At Dr. Wormwood's laboratory, we guarantee stable reanimation, minimal screaming, and a 90% reduction in accidental rampaging. We believe in measured science, not wild explosions, runaway specimens, and how did he phrase it? Field testing during a panic? Oh, ignore that. Each client receives a fully revived loved one equipped with basic motor function, selective memory retention, and our patented polite behavior conditioning. Remarkable! Yes, we teach them manners. Oh no! Put that arm back where you found it! Dr. Wormwood's reanimation service. Because death is no excuse for poor behavior. not responsible for mild biting, emotional detachment, or unsolicited staring. This is a public service announcement from your local authorities. Due to the recent scientific enthusiasm, this week has been designated Reanimation Awareness Week. Citizens are advised to remain calm and follow these simple guidelines. If a loved one has recently returned from the dead, do not panic, do not run, do not offer them your arm under any conditions. If approached by a reanimated individual, maintain eye contact, speak clearly, offer them a hat to improve public comfort.
Mrs. Fields Reporter Jenkins, I appear to be in a residential area where several former residents are walking.
Thank you, Jenkins. Remember, citizens, these individuals are still members of your community.
One of them just tried to eat my microphone.
That is considered normal adjustment behavior.
Oh, Jesus, they appear to be entering the house now.
In the event of a full outbreak, please proceed calmly to your nearest designated safe facility. This concludes your public safety message. Government not responsible for biting, shambling, or loss of microphone personnel.
Clatter, clatter. Your bone breathe. The bone dry beat. Up on the white sand of the bay, two frames of calcium stand tall. Coconut head and a hollow grin, waiting for the phantom to appear. Waiting now. The moon is a witness to pride, the vanity of the walking dead. Shake those dry frames, shake them. Shake those dry frames, shake them. A hollow grin in the moonlight, hollow grin. The bone dry beat is calling, calling us home. She is a lady of the mist, walking where the salt water meets. Two skeletons duel for her hand, clashing white sticks in the dark. One brings a shell of false silver, one brings a crown of dead leaves. They fight for nothing. Shake those dry frames, shake them. Shake those dry frames, shake them. A hollow grin in the moonlight, hollow grin. The bone dry beat is calling. Behold the judgment of the tide. The water shall wash the beach clean. No man can own the spirit of air. Why do you fight for the wind? The system of the bone is falling. Return to the earth and be still. Be still now. The broken repeat. Coconut head, coconut head, hollow grin. The tide is rising, rising high. Clatter.
Has your automobile become haunted? Has your neighbor become undead? Has a scientist assured you everything was perfectly safe? Then you need Grimble and Sons Catastrophic Insurance.
You're telling me this policy covers all of that?
We cover haunted vehicles, reanimated incidents, gargoyle-related property damage, and most forms of experimental science.
What about, hypothetically, a lab accident that spreads?
That's our mild apocalypse plan.
What's the deductible?
Depends. How many limbs are still accounted for?
Most of them.
Excellent. You qualify for our silver survival tier.
What if my loved one comes back warm?
We classify that as a partial recovery.
What if they try to eat me?
Then you'll be glad you added the family protection coverage. Grimble and Sons. When the impossible happens, we file the paperwork. Policy does not cover intentional resurrection, emotional distress, or acts of overconfidence by licensed scientists.
Bum, 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 bum. Shoo up, shoo up. Bum, 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 bum. Coming to you from the great beyond. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. The road is a river of bone underneath a cold silver moon. I twist the dial on my coffin-sized radio. I whistle a home while I whistle a haunting tune. The signal rises from the grave like a hand from the damp earth. A hollow voice invites me in to see what the night is worth on the graveyard shift tonight. Sandals will scream. The phantoms sing the heavy hits where the listeners never truly sleep. Just a dial turn away from home. It's a zombie prom at the drive-in, dance until our skin turns blue. A skeleton girl in a polka dot dress wants to share a shake with you. The DJ sounds like a rattling chain, spinning vinyl made of ice. Keep those requests coming in. Being dead is oh so nice. Ever really gone. They're just spinning on the platter, trapped in the velvet of the dashboard, watching the midnight world shatter. I'm having midnight snacks that bite back in the back of a black sedan. The music is a message from the void, coming from a hollow man. We're all just frequents tuning in to the frequency of the loss before the battery runs dry, and we pay the final cost on the graveyard shift tonight. The phantoms sing the heavy hits where the listeners never truly sleep. Just a dial turn away from home, where the sun never rises. Stay scary, Daddy-O. Did you hear that? It's for you.
Good evening. There it is again. Just slides right out. Like I've said it 1,000 times. Like I've said it to you. The vent hasn't spoken tonight. Which is concerning. You get used to things, you know? Even the disturbing ones. Especially the disturbing ones. They become routine. Like breakfast. Or screaming. Breakfast screaming is the worst kind, by the way. Too early for commitment. It's quiet now. No scratching. No whispering. No voice telling me who I am. Which means I already know. My name is Raz. Huh. That didn't hurt as much as I expected. I thought there'd be lightning, or dramatic violin, or at least a nurse bursting in with a clipboard and a disappointed sigh. Instead, it feels correct. I remember the microphone. I remember the stories. I remember the pauses. You. Always you. Funny thing. He told me stories were a coping mechanism. A way to stay grounded. To separate fantasy from reality. But what if the stories are the only real thing? What if the walls are fiction? What if I've been talking to you this whole time, and you've been very rude not to answer? Honestly, a simple hello would have gone a long way. Maybe a postcard. Dear Raz, love the madness, hate the decor. Me too. Still, you're new here, aren't you? Listening, leaning in, waiting. And something else is here tonight. I can hear them. Do you hear that? Not the nurses. Too light. Too careful. Like someone who doesn't belong here. There's someone at the door. That door doesn't open. Not like this. Not gently. Not what I expected. White, but not clean. Lace, but worn. Like something that remembers being beautiful. And the mask. A rabbit. Cracked. Delicate. Watching me. Well, that's new. Usually when something watches me, it at least has the decency to be imaginary. She hasn't moved. Not much. Just breathing. She's closer now. She raised her hands. Just slightly. 2 fingers curling inward. Like she's calling to me.
Raz.
You know that name too. Of course you do. Everyone seems to know that name except me. Well, except me before tonight. That's comforting. Nothing says stability like a mysterious rabbit woman knowing your identity before you do.
Come with me.
That's it? No explanation? No dramatic monologue? No, the truth will shatter your mind speech? You're really cutting corners on the villain introduction here. Or hero. Or whatever you are. She tilted her head. Just slightly.
You don't belong here.
That might be the nicest thing anyone has said to me in a while. Well, I suppose I have a choice. Stay here, within the walls, with the vent metal parents and routines, or follow something unknown that opened a door that no one else could. And to be quite honest, I've always liked a good story. All right, I'm coming. Good evening. Try not to go anywhere. I might be back.
Shadows crawl across the wall. The clock strikes 1. Hear the call. Footsteps echo down the hall. I am the ghost who hears it all. Hush now, don't breathe my name. Your fear, it flickers like a flame. You look, but you don't see. You pass right through what's left of me. Hush now, stay where you are. I circle close, then drift afar. Your world feels thin and small. I am the ghost who hears it all. Teacups rattle in their tray. Curtain trembles, pulls away. Your own heartbeat sounds so loud, like a drum in empty clouds. Hush now, don't breathe my name. Your fear, it flickers like a flame. You look, but you don't see. You pass right through what's left of me. Hush now, stay where you are. I circle close, then drift afar. Your world feels thin and small. I am the ghost who hears it all. Once I held this fairy key. Once this room belonged to me. Now I linger, faint and small, a sigh pressed deep inside the wall. Hush now, don't breathe my name. Your fear, it flickers like a flame. You look, but you don't see. You pass right through what's left of me. Hush now, stay where you are. I circle close, then drift afar. Your world feels thin and small. I am the ghost who hears it all. So small.
The Witch of Bellows Falls, Vermont's haunted river town. Deep in the forest of southeastern Vermont, where the Connecticut River twists and turns through the hills, a legend lingers. One that has haunted the town of Bellows Falls for over a century. They speak of a woman accused of witchcraft in the 1800s, whose presence can still be felt along the riverbanks and empty streets at night. Some call her Witch of Bellows Falls. The story begins in the mid-19th century, when the town was growing, but still isolated. A woman of mysterious demeanor drew suspicion from her neighbors. Some claim she cursed crops. Others whispered she could bend the will of animals and men alike. Records of formal trials are scarce, but letters and diaries from townsfolk mention a series of tragic incidents: drowned livestock, sudden illnesses, and a child lost to the river, all blamed on her supposed power. As the decades passed, reports of sightings began. Fishermen on the river claimed to see a shadowy figure gliding along the mist, her robes dark and tattered, lantern light flickering in the fog. Travelers spoke of whispers carried on the wind, warning them to stay away from certain streets after dark. One man returning from work at dusk, described seeing her standing silently on the bridge, staring into the water. When he called out, she vanished into the mist. Others reported the same figure near abandoned homes, moving silently, sometimes reaching out, as though to beckon the living toward danger. Some incidents turned deadly. A fisherman was lost during a foggy night, his boat found smashed on the rocks. No other explanation offered. A child reportedly wandered too close to the river and was pulled in by unseen hands. Throughout the 20th century, explorers and paranormal investigators began documenting the area. Many claimed feelings of unease, sudden cold spots, and whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Some even captured faint glowing orbs or shadows moving against the wind. Despite modern skepticism, the legend persists. Local residents often avoid certain streets after dark, and fishermen still tell stories of the mysterious woman watching from the riverbanks. Historians suggest the events could be explained by superstition, coincidence, or the treacherous geography of the river. Fog and fast currents have claimed lives, and isolation bred fear and suspicion. But the consistency of reports over more than a century leaves many wondering, is there something more? And then there are stories the records don't capture. Whispered accounts of shadows in trees, footsteps on empty streets, and a feeling of being watched whenever the fog rolls in. Some believe the witch was never truly human. Others think she may have been misunderstood, or a scapegoat for tragedy. Yet every generation in Bellows Falls adds its own experiences, its own warnings, its own tales of the shadow by the river. Today, the town thrives with commerce and quiet streets, but the legend endures. Bellows Falls carries the memory of its haunted river, a place where history, fear, and the supernatural intertwine. And some nights, when the fog is thick and the wind carries a whisper, the witch of Bellows Falls may still be there, watching silently, waiting. Whether a woman, a spirit, or a shadow of the past, the river remembers, the town remembers, and perhaps so do we. The Haunted Isle of Shoals, New England coast. Off the rugged coast of New Hampshire and Maine, a cluster of small islands emerges from the Atlantic fog, a place where the sea is wild, the cliffs are steep, and the past refuses to stay buried. These are the Isles of Shoals, home to centuries of tragedy, piracy, and legends that continue to haunt the living. The islands were first settled in the early 1600s by fishermen and traders. Life was harsh. Rocky soil, strong winds, and the constant threat of storms. But humans persisted, drawn by the bounty of the Atlantic and the isolation the islands offered. Stories of hauntings began almost immediately. Some settlers claimed that the spirits of the drowned lingered near the shore, appearing as flickering lights on stormy nights. Others whispered that pirate spirits roamed the islands, guarding hidden treasures and punishing anyone who trespassed. Shipwrecks became common. Boats vanished in the sudden fog. Sailors disappeared without trace, and families were left mourning with no explanation. Locals blamed curses, spirits, and the restless dead of the Isles. Witches, too, are said to have lived among the settlers. Legends speak of a small coven that invoked protection against storms, but whose power was feared and misunderstood. Their spirits, some claim, remain, walking the cliffs and lighthouses, warning sailors of impending danger. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, visitors continued to report strange phenomena. Ghostly sailors walking along the docks, shadowy figures glimpsed from ship decks, lantern lights bobbing along empty piers, and unexplained voices carried on the wind. One fisherman recounted seeing a spectral figure of a pirate pointing toward a jagged reef. Moments later, a current suddenly swept his boat perilously close to the rocks. He escaped, convinced the figure had guided him, or warned him from danger. Some shipwrecks had no survivors, and some disappeared entirely. Over time, tales of curses became woven into the very identity of the Isles. Every stormy night brought a new story of spirits, vanishings, and unexplained phenomena. Local historians and paranormal investigators began documenting reports. Thermal cameras caught moving lights, audio recordings captured faint voices, and the unusual shadows were spotted in the fog. Many believe the spirits are residual energies of the lives lost to sea and storms, frozen in time, replaying their final moments. The geography itself seems to preserve the haunting. Tall cliffs amplify sound, fog bends the light, and the relentless Atlantic keeps the islands isolated. Some say this isolation traps spirits, making the Isles a natural crossroads between the living and the dead. Modern researchers speculate the hauntings may be a mix of natural phenomena, maritime accidents, and the human imagination. Yet no explanation fully accounts for the consistency of the sightings and the stories passed down for centuries. To step onto the Isles of Shoals is to step into a liminal space where history, danger, and the supernatural intertwine. Whether pirate, settler, witch, or sailor, the spirits of the Isles of Shoals endure. They watch, they wait. And those who venture too close to the edge of the cliffs or the fog-bound shores may feel their presence, forever entwined with the restless sea. The Haunting of Fort Griswold in Groton, Connecticut. In southeastern Connecticut, along the Thames River, lies a place where history and legend collide. A place soaked in blood, bravery, and betrayal. This is Fort Griswold, site of a Revolutionary War battle, and home to some of New England's most persistent ghost stories. On September 6, 1781, British forces attacked the fort in what would be known as the Battle of Groton Heights. Hundreds of soldiers fought for survival, and many perished in the chaos. Eyewitness accounts describe fierce fighting. Colonel Ledyard, commander of the fort, was famously executed after surrendering. The fort's defenders fell, one by one, leaving behind screams, smoke, and blood-stained earth. Since that day, locals and visitors have reported strange phenomena. Phantom soldiers marching silently through the mist. The sound of drums, muskets, and footsteps echoes on the hill, even when no one else is there. Park rangers have described cold spots that appear without explanation. Some have felt an unseen hand touch their shoulder while walking the battlements. Visitors at night have reported shadowy figures moving across the field, disappearing when approached. Modern paranormal teams have investigated extensively. Thermal cameras and recording devices pick up anomalies, unexplained lights, movement, and sounds. Some people believe these are residual energies from the battle, echoes of intense fear, death, and sacrifice. One man, exploring the fort after hours, claimed he saw a British officer walking across the battlements. He described the figure as fully formed, uniform glowing faintly in the mist, vanishing when he blinked. Others report hearing commands being shouted in the dead of night, as if the fort were still under siege. Historians suggest some of the phenomena may be explained by geography, acoustics, and imagination. The hilltop amplifies sound. The fog bends light. Yet accounts spanning over 2 centuries show remarkable consistency. Stories of hauntings don't end with soldiers. Colonial-era ghosts, including civilians, caught in the chaos, have been reported wandering the grounds. Some visitors say they feel a weight on their chest, as if the past refuses to rest. The execution of Colonel Ledyard became a focal point. Witnesses have reported phantom footsteps near his statue, soft whispers calling his name, and lantern-like lights hovering over the hill. Paranormal investigators continue to return. Cameras capture anomalies. Audio records faint footsteps, and yet no one can explain everything. The spirit of Fort Griswold, it seems, is persistent. To walk the grounds is to step into a place where history and legend are inseparable. To hear the wind whistle through the ramparts is to feel the echo of 18th century fear and courage. And perhaps, when the fog rolls in and the night is silent, the fort remembers what happened there. The soldiers, the civilians, the cries, the courage, all lingering, unseen, and eternal. Fort Griswold stands today as a monument to history, to the fallen, and to the unknown. But for those who listen, watch, and dare to explore, the fort may still be alive with echoes of the past. The House of Shadows. Elias Reed had always felt out of place in the city. That blur of concrete, traffic noise, and neon reflections that never quite felt like home. When he received an acceptance letter from Ashton University, it felt like a clean slate. A chance to reinvent himself through graduate studies in experimental music production. But there was one problem: housing. By late August, every dorm and affordable apartment near campus was claimed. So Elias turned to an online listing that seemed almost too good to be true. A spacious room in historic brownstone, 3 blocks from campus, rent far below market. The landlord claimed it was leftover university property being subleased. Elias messaged immediately. 2 hours later, he had a key and directions. The building stood on a quiet street just outside the entertainment district. Its brickwork dark with age. A wrought iron gate squeaked as he stepped up from the narrow front stoop. Inside was silence. A long corridor stretched ahead, walls lined with old photographs and sepia-toned snapshots of students from decades past. Faces stared back at him, eyes strangely intense, as though watching every hesitant step he took. By the far end of the hall was apartment 3B, his new home. When Elias turned the key and stepped inside, the air felt oddly cool, as though the space exhaled when he entered. The room was large, sparsely furnished. A bed, desk, shelves, and a single old stereo system that looked half a century old, its wood veneer dulled with time. He set up his backpack and powered up his laptop. Midnight oil burned for the next 3 days as he organized lectures and digital plugins. By the time Friday evening arrived, exhaustion weighed on him so heavily that he collapsed into bed without eating. He woke to a sound. Low, rhythmic, not quite music, but closer to vibration than noise. It was coming from somewhere deep within the building. He blinked at the dark ceiling, confused. Had someone down the hall dropped something heavy? The sound continued, slow at first, then rising and falling, like breathing. Elias rubbed his eyes and stepped into the corridor. The photographs seemed too still, too silent. The sound grew louder as he walked toward the staircase. At the bottom, The old stereo in the lobby was playing, but no one was there. Vinyl crackles filled the empty space, followed by a melancholy melody, a string instrument tuned far lower than reality should allow. Though Elias could not see a record on the turntable, the music poured from the ancient speakers with an eerie richness, as though a ghost had claimed them. Frozen, Elias listened. The melody was wrong, dissonant, mournful, vibrating at a frequency that pressed against his skull. He felt it pull at his thoughts, like water dragging a pebble down into the depths. Then, as suddenly as it began, the music stopped. Silence. Absolute. But the static lingered in his ears. Later that night, Elias noticed something strange in a text message he received from an unknown number. The house listens. He stared at the message, fingers trembling. He didn't recognize the number. And yet the text looked intentional, like it was meant for him. His phone buzzed again. I play what is forgotten. Elias left the building that moment, but his phone had no signal. The streetlights outside seemed dimmer, the shadows deeper than they should be. Across the street, every window in the opposite row of the buildings was dark. No lights, no movement, nothing. Over the next few days, the strange messages continued. Untraceable numbers, cryptic phrases, musical notations he didn't understand, yet somehow recognized. His sleep became fitful, dreams scored by that dissonant melody. At times, the dream felt more vivid than real life, as though some part of him had already crossed that unseen threshold. One night, after midnight, he heard the music again, not distant this time, but beneath his bedroom door. He opened it to an empty hallway, still, silent, except for the faintest vibration in the air. It called to him, low and sorrowful, as though pleading. Elias followed it down the stairs. Then he saw it. In the basement, tucked behind abandoned boxes and cracked plaster walls, was an old room with a heavy curtain drawn close. Behind it, a stereo far older and more elaborate than the one in his apartment. A console filled with tube amplifiers, strange dials, and instruments that shouldn't exist in this world. And seated before it, a gaunt figure, in threadbare clothes, head bowed, played a stringed instrument that emitted sound without a bow. The strings shimmered in colors that weren't colors, hues his eyes could not name, frequencies that overwhelmed his senses. When the pale figure lifted its head, the face was hollow where features should be. Only shadows beneath a pale, expressionless skull. And it spoke, not with a voice, but through the music itself. A phrase that pulsed through Elias's mind. Play what cannot be heard. Learn what cannot be forgotten. He felt the melody wrap around him, at once beautiful and terrifying, as though the house itself had chosen him. That night, the building listened and began to play. When the clock strikes 13, A tale of time, silence, and unseen watchers. The town of Greystone was quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and the streets grew empty soon after sunset. Old houses leaned into one another on the narrow roads, their brick walls scarred by decades of wind and rain. Among them was the Whitmore estate, long abandoned, its windows dark and unwelcoming, its front gates chained shut. Local kids whispered stories about it, about clocks that ran backward, rooms that moved, shadows that weren't attached to anyone. The adults avoided it quietly, as if acknowledging its presence might stir something best left alone. Mara Sinclair was a journalist, young and ambitious, visiting Greystone to document abandoned buildings. She had heard stories about the Whitmore estate and dismissed them as a sort of folklore designed to keep children entertained. She wanted photos, video, and a first-hand story, nothing more. The sun was already dipping when she arrived, carrying her camera bag and a small LED lantern. The estate loomed above her, ivy crawling up its walls like black veins. Its front door hung on rusted hinges, swaying slightly in the wind. She pushed it open with a creak that echoed down the long marble-floored hall. Inside, dust mites floated in the lantern light. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, and furniture lay draped in yellowed sheets. The air smelled of mold and old wood, of forgotten lives. Mara began to explore. Every step seemed louder than it should have been, each echo swallowing her words. As she reached the grand staircase, she noticed the first clock. A large grandfather clock, untouched by time, its face pristine and brass gleaming. Oddly, its hands were frozen, at 13 minutes past 12. Her fingers brushed the pendulum. It was cold, impossibly cold, as if metal had absorbed the chill of 1,000 winters. She shivered, laughing to herself. 13 o'clock. Someone had a sense of humor, she whispered. But the building didn't answer. It simply listened. Hours passed as Mara documented the rooms. She found a study filled with dusty ledgers, a ballroom with shattered mirrors, and a library where books lay strewn across the floor, as if someone had been searching desperately. At midnight, she returned to the staircase. The grandfather clock remained frozen, yet a faint ticking began. Soft at first, then growing louder. Not mechanical, organic, pulsing, deliberate. She froze. Her lantern flickered. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere, vibrating the floorboards beneath her feet. Mara climbed the stairs slowly, heart pounding. On the second floor, a long corridor stretched before her, doors on either side. The ticking grew louder as she approached the last door on the left. It was locked, but the doorknob turned smoothly in her hand. She pushed it open. Inside was a small room, entirely empty except for a single wall clock. It hung crooked, its hands pointing again, this time to 13. At first, she laughed nervously. A prank, someone playing with old stories. But then, the ticking stopped. Silence. Then, a voice. Not a whisper, not a shout. A slow, measured intonation that echoed directly inside her mind. Time has moved on, but you have not. Mara stepped back, blinking. The room felt smaller. The walls were breathing, expanding and contracting, as though the house itself were alive. Shadows clung to corners, twisting unnaturally, forming shapes that should not exist. She felt drawn to the clock. Its face seemed to ripple, like liquid metal. Then, as she stared, she saw it. Reflections of people she didn't know, watching her from inside the glass. Hollow eyes, faces pale as ash, mouths moving silently. Her lantern fell from her hand, plunging the room into darkness. The ticking began again, louder now, insistent, and the door slammed shut. She tried to open it. Locked. The walls seemed to close slightly around her. And then she noticed something else. The shadows moved on their own. One detached from the corner and glided toward her. She stumbled back. Another followed. And then the air grew thick, as if each breath pulled in centuries of dust and decay. The grandfather clock, the one in the hallway, began striking. 1, 2, 12, 13. The last strike vibrated in her chest, resonating so deeply she feared it would crack her bones. Suddenly, the figures in the clock's glass began to step forward, not through doors, through the glass itself. Faces she could not name, eyes filled with longing, malice, and hunger. Mara ran. She didn't look back, but the ticking followed her, accelerating, overlapping, echoing in her head. Every room she passed seemed unfamiliar, yet every step brought her closer to the basement stairs she hadn't noticed before. She reached the front door, finally. She pushed it open and ran into the foggy night. The street was empty. Her camera, bag, and lantern were gone, replaced with a single note lying on the cobblestones. Time waits for no one, except those who remain. Mara never returned to Greystone. Her story was never published, but she could still hear it sometimes, when the city was quiet, at night, a slow ticking in her mind. And she knew, somehow, that one day, the 13th strike would come for her.